So you go under contract. What's the next step? Well, you got to submit your earnest money. Most likely, you're going to submit the earnest money to a title company. We're here at WFG Title Company, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about what title work is. All right, let's go check it out. Hey.
Hello, Abigail. How are you?
Good. Ready to close.
We are. Would you like to grab any water, snacks before we get to the closing room?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
This is my favorite part. They always have cookies and lots of drinks.
Yes, definitely.
The PG drinks.
Come right on in here.
Title is an important part of a property, but what is title work?
Title insurance is the only insurance that you could possibly buy that insures the past. Every other insurance you buy starts the day you buy it, and it insures the future. So title insurance is the only one that's saying we're going to look back to the history, and then we're going to come up with a report, and this is what we found on the property. If the property has sold 5 times, maybe previous owners have refinanced, each 3 times, that's 15 deeds of trust. We have looked at all of those deeds and all of those deeds of trust and said, this person sold to this person and this person took out this loan, but we found a release. And so when we do the title report, we're saying this is what we found, who the owner is and what the liens are against the property and anything that we cannot insure. So for example, buyer beware. There's these easements for the utilities, which are typical on every property. There could be other things that are there. A lot of times there's mineral rights and there's different things that show up on the title work. And that's where people look and see, once they get title insurance, what am I going to be covered for and what's going to happen.
You mentioned a lien. What is a lien on a property?
A lien can be, most likely, and the usual, is a loan against the property. So for example, somebody's borrowed money, they have a first deed of trust. So there's kind of different ways I use the word lien, because a lien is basically anything holding a place on a property. So it could be a deed of trust that we're going to have to order a payoff. In that, we're usually seeing that it's not an actual lien that there's money owing, but we receive notification this property has a homeowners association. There could be a homeowners association lien. The seller could have gotten a judgment. Let's say he was involved in a credit situation. So for the buyer's protection, we are having to look at everything we find and take care of it.
So one lien that I've seen in the past is a roofer's lien. People get their roof done but not pay the roofer, so they put a lien against the property, or any other kind of mechanical liens. And
Right.
That's something that you're going to see in the title document.
Right, as long as it's been recorded, and that's the key thing, is we are taking all of our information by what is recorded at the county. So as long as that's recorded, we compile it all together, and exactly. So in that case, the title report would say that we need to get a release from that lien. They're not just telling us there is a lien. They're saying in order for us to give the buyer a clear title, we need to get a release for that lien. It may be that the contractor was paid and they just haven't released it. They may be owed some money and we need to pay that. But the title work tells us the requirements of what we have to do to issue title insurance.
And then sometimes I see these things called exceptions in your title work. What are those?
Those are things that stay with the property that we cannot possibly insure, that they don't affect the property. Because one, we usually know they do affect the property. So for example, most every property has covenants and restrictions. So let's say you take an area like Old Briargate. There's covenants that have been recorded when that was developed. Okay, we know there's no longer a homeowners association, but those covenants don't go away. I mean, rarely do they ever go away with any kind of time. So even if there's not an HOA, those covenants are still there. It doesn't mean there's anybody to enforce them. So there's not an HOA. So we have to put them as an exception though, because those stay recorded with the property. Same thing, you know, if there was like water rights. There could be water rights that were recorded against a property 110 years ago that obviously no one is trying to enforce. Same thing with the utility easements. They're just things that pass with the property that we know we cannot get removed.
Can you explain the different ways that you can hold title on a property?
Sure. Typically, an individual in Colorado, it just shows their name. There are some different things that can follow that in severalty. As sole owner, typically in Colorado, it just says their name. So really where you have to make a choice is more if you're buying two people or more. And then you get into, do you want to buy as joint tenants or do you want to buy as tenants in common? Those are the two most likely ways. If you want to have it as joint tenants, you definitely want that to be shown, because of the fact that if you don't have joint tenants in there, the law reverts it back to tenants in common. You're wondering, why does that matter? Well, joint tenants means that if one or the other person dies, then all that is needed in joint tenancy is the recording of the death certificate, and the other person is now entitled by themselves. So you don't at that point have to go through probate. You don't really even have to have any new deed. Simply, you've got joint tenants and the recording of the warranty deed ends the joint tenancy and the person owns it by themselves. And that is probably what the majority of married couples and or just couples use. Now, the other choice of tenants in common really comes into play more when people are maybe buying as a partnership or a group. Let's say a mother and father are buying with the son and daughter-in-law. Okay, they've each put up equal money on the property. So in essence, do they each want to be all entitled together? Or do they want each one of their halves as a married couple to be separated? So in that case, they would be buying as tenants in common as the whole, and then each family may want to be joint tenants for the death certificate option, because if you are tenants in common and when somebody passes away, you do have to go through a probate in court. So that's probably the reason most people make that choice. There can be other implications for tax reasons, etc. But of course, you and I can't give tax advice. So those are, if somebody has a question, have to look elsewhere. But from the ease of whether a property has to go through probate or not is why people pick joint tenancy.
Why is it important to have title insurance?
The thing is if you do not have title insurance, you have no assurances that that person is the owner of the property and what is the outstanding money owed. So for example, you could actually still look at the county records. If somebody came along and said, hey, I'll sell you my house, the county records is just reporting recorded documents. They are not looking at anything beyond that. So basically, that person could have gotten a deed fraudulently. There could be a bad notary. There could be something in what we call the chain of title, which is basically looking at each step through the process. And they are just recording. So if you looked at the county records and saw who the owner was, and the person promised you they didn't have any loan against the property, it's taken a pretty big risk with what is the cost of the title insurance is basically in the hundreds of dollars typically. And you're buying a $400,000 or $500,000 house, for example. If the title insurance is $900, is it not worth the coverage of saying, I want to know who owns that property, and I want to know that anything is being paid off against it. And furthermore, I more importantly want to know if any of that's messed up, it's not my problem. It's the title company's problem. Yeah. And that's where if you don't have title insurance, you literally could buy a house, but you don't really own it. Yes, you want to know that if there's a loan against it, it's going to get paid off, and the person giving you title has the right to give you title.
This is Abby with Abode, and we look forward to working with you.